right. Hey, everybody. We have a lot to discuss. Duke Keith here with you. It was, it was not pretty. The UTEP Miners drop a tough one to the Marshall Thundering Herd. Final score 74-65, but we're here to talk about it with you. If you want to talk about it with us, and your comments certainly welcome on Facebook as we try to get this thing working. This is the first time I've ever done this, trying a new podcast, and honestly, whether it's Facebook Live or podcasts or whatever, Snap, Insta, Twit, Face, we're here for you. And want to be here for you to talk about it as the UTEP Miners drop to 7-16, 2-9 in the season. It is not pretty right now. And we're going to get to some highlights. We're going to talk about that. Your phone calls, certainly, well, your phone calls. I'm in talk show mode as I try to do 5 things at once. If you want to talk about it, your comments are welcome. Hi, Jacob. I don't know exactly how this is going to update and how I'm going to see these things as they update. I don't know if I'm going to have to keep refreshing my page or exactly what. But we're here for it. And, there we go, Jacob. I am on. Are you on? Can you hear me? I'm on now. Hey, Jacob, can you hear me? I'm on. Hi. Anyway, hopefully you can hear something. I'm seeing a view meter, and that's helpful. And this is, as I say, first time I've ever done it using this app called Switcher. It's pretty darn cool. Seems to be. I'm on right now. Let's see if this thing's going to work. I'm going to wait for somebody to say, I can't hear you or something, just to get some kind of comment as we kind of run down some of the pertinent statistics. Marshall shooting just 40.6% in the first half, but they had a 10-point lead, 34-24 in the Miners. You can hear me? Thank you, Annette. Thank you very much. I'm glad this is working. That's very helpful. And so that means we can get to some highlights. So both teams scoring 40 points plus. Actually, UTEP outscored Marshall in the second half, but only by 1. So it was a 9-point loss, 74-65, but the Miners just dreadful shooting. 34.5% in the first half, 10 of 29, and they turned the ball over way too much. So without further ado, do I think Barbie would come back? If he was asked by Phil Center? Possibly. I don't see why not. I don't see, I just don't know that Phil Center's going to ask Tony Barbie to come back to El Paso, and I don't know that that's necessarily something that folks around here are going to want. But the UTEP Miners certainly could use some help, and I think that it's pretty safe to say that Phil Johnson's probably not going to get the job, as much as he might like to have that job. I think that as you take a look at this UTEP program, I think that it would have taken a deep run in the Conference USA tournament, maybe for Phil to be seriously considered, because I think Jim Center's got plenty of contacts. Plenty of people have certainly contacted him, knowing that this job is going to be up for grabs, and he has a pretty good idea of who he wants for the job. Great. Okay, Jacob, glad. Would I welcome him back? Yeah, I think so. I think that part of Tony's deal was that he was so standoffish. A lot of people didn't like him because he just, up and left. A lot of people didn't like Billy Clyde Gillespie because he just up and left. But I think that Barbie recruited very well, was certainly well thought of that way, just never seemed to reach out. His family never moved to El Paso, I don't think. If they did, it was just very shortly, and then they moved away. And he just didn't seem to want to spend a whole lot of time here. So he is Calipari's top assistant at Kentucky. Certainly he can recruit, and I think that UTEP could do worse. Let's put it that way. But I think Jim Center's going to have his own guy. Much like Dana Dimmel was kind of out of the blue. I think that Jim Center realized that Dana Dimmel was interested and said, hey, there's our guy for football. Might have somebody like that for basketball. And maybe it is Tony Barbie. Who knows? But without further ado, I tell you what, let's do. Let's go ahead and get to the highlights as the UTEP Miners battling the Marshall Thundering Herd. And we're going to get to this. Let's see. As we start things up here tonight, got some highlights for you. And here we go. Evan Gilliard. Great job by the young freshman Gilliard to Paul Thomas. to Omega Harris in transition. Great work in transition. But how about this from John Elmore, the Marshall Thunder third, on the inbounds pass. Passes it back, turns, fires for three. It was kind of like that. Miners, in turn, get another from their super freshman. Gilliard's vision penetration, kick out Thomas, swish it goes. But Elmore right back at you. Look at this thing. Wild, man. Marshall coach Dan Antoni calls his early burly style hillbilly ball. He's allowed because he went to Marshall. Graduated, coached his little brother there. Might have heard of that guy. Dude by the name of Mark D'Antoni. Coaches the Houston Rockets these days. That's big brother Dan. That's right. Hillbilly ball or not, UTEP been hanging around until they started doing stuff like this. Omega Harris, the alley. Oops. I don't think it's supposed to work like that. Right after that, Elmore. A little shake, a little bake, a little toss to Corbin Stevens. That is athletic. Then it's C.J. Burks. That's not a lane. That's a freeway. Maybe it's been too long since we've seen an open freeway like that in El Paso. Go 10 people. Too long. Still, Evan Gilliard, the real deal. I didn't stutter, did I? I didn't stutter. Evan Gilliard, the real deal. One more time. Gilliard, comma, Evan. Deal, comma, real. Evan Gilliard. Did I mention he's a freshman? Yeah. By now you're wondering, with this many highlights, the Miners had to be up by 20, right? Yeah. Elmore, deep three. That's our life in basketball now. Gilliard trying to defend the Don, but another cheap turnover. How about this one, though? That is amazing. Elmore, that's the deep three ball. And that is our life in basketball. Everybody's Steph Curry. Gilliard trying to defend the Don, but another cheap turnover. Miners commit 17 of those. Gilliard just throws it up. And that's actually not a turnover. That's a rebound and missed shot. And that's the way it finishes. Marshall 74, UTEP 65, as UTEP falls to 2-9 in Conference USA play. 2-9. And they are second from the bottom. They are in danger of not making the Conference USA tournament. I think we're talking about UTEP basketball. Indeed we are. Phil Johnson being so poor, that was embarrassing. Again, Miners 7-16, 2-9. You know, and I honestly, UTEP has had a lot of issues. Injury issues. Guys leaving and coming back. Keith Frazier leaving and coming. That was kind of weird. Matt Wilms. The Miners are just trying to work him back into the fray. And Phil Johnson talked about the super freshmen. Guys like Evan Gilliard. They've got a good nucleus of younger players that they can keep everybody together. And Phil Johnson, after the game, did have this to say in regards to UTEP.
You know, it's hard to execute. There's some guys on the floor that aren't particularly great at executing some of our sets and plays and offenses, and we kind of just got down to either try to get the ball low to Matt and put Evan in screen and roll and go get fouled. And I thought he did. He made some shots, and he's a good little competitor.
Did they, with their pace and the way they play, did they kind of get you playing the same?
I didn't think so. That was a real big point of emphasis. Maybe at times we definitely took some ill-advised shots. There's no question about that. And we're a team that, man, one or two of those in a key stretch when you're within striking distance, 5-6 points, and they can be killers like a turnover can be. But I didn't think it got too crazy up and down, wild like that. And that was a big point of emphasis coming into the game. They're one of the leading scoring teams in the country. I don't know, where are they, Jeff? They're in top 10. And they put up 115, and they put up some tremendous numbers. I mean, and so the 74 is a little deceiving because we fouled late, and really it should have been, if we didn't have to foul late, it would have been in the 60s. And so I take some pride in that a team that is capable of scoring 130, we hold to 60s.
Yeah. Say what you will about holding Marshall to 74 points. The UTEP Miners are they're having their issues. And they may have held Marshall to 74 points, but and that is below their season average. It was decent defense, but the Miners just not able to fill it up, and they've just, I mean, it's a team of odd parts. It's the island of misfit toys right now. And better players, better development and accountability. Yeah, Matt Wilms, Mr. Hospital. Augustine. We can always count on Augustine. How ironic is it that Floyd's most talented players are finally here, but he ends up leaving early in the season? Phil, less than Floyd, less than me, less than Haskins. Okay, Jacob. Come on, man. Less than, you're putting yourself right below Don Haskins? Dude. Okay. Still though, I 2-9, you can't argue with 2-9. You can't argue with 7-16. It is not good for UTEP basketball. It's not acceptable for UTEP basketball, and Jim Center is going to have some work to do. Issues, yeah, they have them, and whether it's off the field or off the court or on the court, the Miners right now second from the bottom in Conference USA, just a step above Charlotte. And that means that they won't even go to the Conference USA tournament in March. So what do? Yeah, I think, honestly, we've talked about Phil Johnson. Phil Johnson would have needed to make a deep run in the Conference USA tournament. He would have needed to make a deep run, possibly even get to the championship game, I think, to be seriously considered. Unless there is some kind of fluke, that's not going to happen. Matt Wilms, pardon me, they haven't been able to keep him healthy, and that's not their fault. He's just dealt with it, but they're trying to spell him and get him back into the action and into games. So, Augustine better than Haskins, greater than Haskins. Okay, Augustine. Okay. If you have a comment, I'm keeping an eye on some of this. Yeah, LOL is right. As the comments go, as we kind of bring you the first hashtag DK Pod. And I think that we're going to do this for National Letter of Intent Signing Day this Wednesday as much as we possibly can. But certainly your comments are welcome on the Facebook page. Chris Rivas, I think we can at least say the team competes for the most part. They just don't have enough horses to finish the race. And there you go. Whether it's been defections, this team, honestly, since Tim Floyd has been back, can you think of another UTEP spell where the Miners have been this snake bit? I mean, honestly, you'd have to go pre-Haskins, and I don't know. I wasn't even around then. I mean, Haskins got here in 1961. Even in the late 70s, I know the Miners went through a spell back in the 70s until Tim Floyd arrived and really started recruiting the heck out of things for Don Haskins. And he got guys like Greg Lackey and Russ Bradford to recruit for him. UTEP was not that good in the 1970s, even though they had Nate Tiny Archibald in the earlier part of that decade, and did pretty well. They weren't the Miners of the 1960s. They weren't the Miners of Nate Tiny Archibald. They weren't the Miners of Tim Hardaway and Greg Foster and others back in the 1980s either. It was a pretty bad decade for UTEP basketball. But deep run in the NCAA. I'm not sure I understand that one. Rabidou? Augustine. Oh my gosh. Anyway, as for this program and its future, yeah, they do need a coach. They do need a coach to turn things around. It has, honestly, I mean, it has not really been consistently good for UTEP. You could argue that Billy Clyde and Doc Sadler, and then Tony Barbie too, had some of the most consistent runs for UTEP. But with Billy Clyde, it was 2 years and gone. With Doc Sadler, 2 years and gone. Tony Barbie, 4 years and gone. And that's kind of the way UTEP is going to be pertinent, perhaps, unless they can get some. I mean, honestly, everybody thought that Tim Floyd was going to be that guy, the guy to come back to the program and really, make the Miners great again, to borrow a phrase. But yeah, it's they kind of, I think, perhaps need to get back to that, hiring a young up and coming coach, or we'll see how Dana Dimmel does. That's been a solid hire. I think everybody respects it, and certainly the social media game has been upped about 50 times from what it was, both under Jim Center, who is an amazing athletic director, at least as far as social media, he tweets and responds and stuff, and Dana Dimmel and his staff, who are all over social media. In that respect, it's been nice to see, because there was no social media presence. Does that translate into wins? Hey, dude, it's social media. Dime a dozen, man. Everybody's got something to say on social media. Proof is going to be in wins and losses, but it's certainly nice to see that UTEP is more open. They need to see the same a little bit from basketball. I think that would help fans a little bit, just to engage with people, because that's the way you do things nowadays, right? Case in point, we're right here, we're doing this thing. We thought Floyd was the second coming of Vasquez. This is from Chris Rivas. I think, were we wrong? Well, I think, honestly, everybody was loving the fact that Tim Floyd, Chicago Bulls, Iowa State, New Orleans Privateers, Idaho, he won at Idaho, right? He won at Idaho. USC, here's a guy who'd been to the mountain and back, even though it was the Chicago Bulls, after Michael Jordan. Yeah. This was, I don't think, honestly, Tim Floyd hasn't forgotten how to coach basketball. He's a good coach, but it just never worked. For whatever reason, it never worked. And it's been 8 years, and it's been too long, and the influence of UTEP basketball around the community dwindles, the crowds dwindle. Jim Center's got his work cut out for him, but I think he knew that coming in. And he's going to have an opportunity to do his thing and make it his program in very rapid fashion, honestly. I never liked Floyd, and people know this. Okay. Well, and Augustine writes, I think Center will understand the importance of UTEP basketball, its place in history, hence he will get a very good coach that has a good staff. UTEP needs to be a top school. Honestly, yes, UTEP does need to be a top school. Now, Conference USA has an awful lot to do with why UTEP is not in the tournament every year. Conference USA is a one-bid league. Middle Tennessee has held a strong position. I think that there are, a couple of up-and-coming programs, and Western Kentucky's right there. You talk about, Marshall doesn't have a great Conference USA record, but they're among the leading scoring teams in the nation, in the top 10. They're a lot of fun to watch. There are some competitive basketball teams in Conference USA. USC, he paid players. Dude, he was cleared from that. Iowa State, not Iowa. Something went right. Bulls, remember the record. Remember the record without Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. He can coach basketball, Augustine. He can coach basketball. He's had a winning record virtually everywhere he's went, save there. And that's when, Michael Jordan decided to say, see ya. At any rate, though, I do agree with Augustine and with others that this is just not, it's not good enough for UTEP basketball. It's not good enough for El Paso. It's not good enough for a program that deserves better. But what you do in a Conference USA, I don't know. I think you play to your strengths. Obviously, when you're playing Rice in North Texas and UTSA, the Miners have natural rivals with people from El Paso who go to games and are loud for UTEP, whether it's men's or women's basketball or football. You've got the base of alums and ex-El Pasoans, or combination thereof, in all of these different cities. It's pretty good if UTEP can build these rivalries and, honestly, just win. That's the main thing. You've got to find a winning program, and that's just not easy to do in a conference like Conference USA. Floyd's time here, he had zero success. You're right. Shelley's, he married the daughter, paid for the wedding. He retired before he took the job. I guess he dreamt of giving UTEP something to be proud of. Well, okay. What if Greg Foster throws his name in the UTEP coaching search? I think Greg would like, that's what I've heard, he'd like to. Worth a shot. Look at what Avery Johnson's doing at Arkansas with no college coaching experience. Avery Johnson's been a head coach in the NBA. Greg Foster has zero head coaching experience. And I know he's recruited. He started his basketball coaching career at UTEP under Tim Floyd. So he has done some recruiting, but it's a different animal, man. He needs a head coaching job, I think, first. Although it would certainly rally the base, but Tim Floyd rallied the base at UTEP. Everybody thought that this was going to be a great hire for this program. Didn't turn out so well. I think Jim Center's got his eye on somebody with coaching experience who can come in and, UTEP, it's a mid-major. It's a mid-major that's been kind of on the skids for a while, but there is that name, and it is worth something, and it will draw Jim Center some pretty good resumes, I think. Foster equals Kugler. Let's bring the NMSU coach here. Why not? UNM did it. Chris Jans is doing a great job. New Mexico State is looking pretty good. Mr. Jans may be on other people's radar. It's interesting that the in-state rival took the guy who was there prior. I've already forgotten his name, but yeah, New Mexico State's doing pretty well right now. Alabama. Chris Rivas, okay, I missed that. When we understand the place of UTEP in history, not just 66, but what Haskins did for basketball, we will transmit to the players, staff, and all. That would be an incredible thing. The players know what it means to be a part of UTEP. There are a lot of guys who were on that squad that defeated Western Kentucky. What was it, a season or two ago? It was a couple of seasons ago. The anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the 66 championship. That was a big deal to have those guys in the locker room. David Big Daddy Latin, Neville the Shadow Shed, coming into the locker room to celebrate with the players. Yeah, there are some of those guys who are still on this team who know what that means. There are plenty of guys who know their history. There are plenty of guys who've seen Glory Road. Not often a school's got a movie, Jerry Bruckheimer movie to plug into the old DVD player and show kids, hey, this is this school. This is UTEP. So they have a decided advantage there. But the money, Tim Floyd was one of the highest paid coaches in Conference USA, about $600,000 a year. Top dog, never got to the NCAA tournament. UTEP can find a good coach. Now, consistency, that's a struggle. That's a struggle, although less in basketball than in football, certainly. The money's an issue. The exposure of Conference USA is an issue. Everybody's on, the internet now. Be.in Sports, the app, all this other stuff that's going on. It's easy to see games. It's easy to be seen anymore, and everybody's got a YouTube channel. Everybody's got social media. You can see stuff the way you couldn't see stuff when it was exclusive, even with an ESPN or ESPN2, or you're on some secondary cable channel somewhere, or on the big networks. It's not even like that anymore. It's so broken down. You can be seen by recruits. If you've got a good social media game, if you can recruit, you can make this happen. We need to keep UTEP, the freshmen, absolutely, and Osborne. Yeah, that's, I've heard that Osborne had words with Phil Johnson on the sidelines, and that could be an issue for UTEP. Can be successful with a new coach. Get Mike Kerfendersky. I like that. We need to have a Loyola Marymount moment. I remember Loyola Marymount back in the 80s. That is an 80s reference right there. Hey, man, Marshall's doing it. That's what Marshall's doing right now. Whether Dan D'Antoni, which is just one of the best names in basketball, Dan D'Antoni. Dan D'Antoni, hey. Whether he calls it hillbilly ball or, Nolan Richardson's 40 Minutes of Hell or whatever you call it, that style attracts players and it attracts recruits. My thought has always been that UTEP ought to look internationally. This is a school that has a reputation as an international school, as a school that has done things a little differently than everybody else to win, whether it was the UTEP track and field program back in the 80s with guys like Suleiman Nambui and all of those national championships with Ted Owens. Hope I got that right. And then you talk about, of course, Don Haskins, the first man to start 5 black players against an all-white lineup in Kentucky in 1966. Haskins maintains, and I believe him, he was just trying to play the best players to win a game. He did not see color. A lot of other people did. Haskins didn't. But, you could argue UTEP was just trying to win with the best athletes it had to do what it could to win. I think that the international game, international basketball, is something that should be embraced. And I think the Miners are an international school. You go south of the border, and I know that there are plenty of good players in Mexico, obviously Brazil and Argentina. This is a campus, a bilingual campus that I think can be open to guys who play that style of ball. And it's all about three-pointers now. I mean, we were talking about this. Get Juarez players. There you go. UACG. Jota. I forget the letter for J. Jota. How about Coach Better? Don't forget Haskins was a women's coach before he was a girls' coach before he came to UTEP. Not even a women's coach. He was a girls' coach. But yeah, there you go. Benjamin, Texas, baby. Back to Headley we go. Why not? How about Coach Baker? Honestly, yeah, Jacob, I would agree. We do need Hank Gathers to have a Loyola Marymount moment. Just right. Let's make sure that everybody's well. Yes, he was a girls basketball coach. Don Haskins was, boys and girls, and drove the school bus and did everything else. But I tell you what, I am impressed with Kevin Baker. I am impressed that the UTEP Miners have been able to do what they've been able to do with basically an 8-player lineup. And I know. There's some of the girls, Rachel Tapps doesn't get in a whole lot, but I mean, for him to do and what the Miners to do what they've done so far and be in the hunt for one of those top 4 berths in Conference USA and a first-round bye in the tournament, to me, he's one of the coaches of the year in the conference. Probably is not going to win it, but certainly they ought to give like a rookie coach award. He'd win that, definitely. And yeah, I know he can coach basketball. That'd be awesome to see. Easy fix. Follow the Golden State rule. Find 5 players who can shoot the 3 ball. That's what it is, man. That's honestly, we're talking about this transition buckets in basketball these days. A 3-pointer could be a transition bucket. Lots of people want to, if it's not a layup or a dunk, they don't think it's a transition bucket. How many people step back in the corner, you fire it off, and the guy's shooting a 3, when it's a 2-on-1? You could go in for an easy layup, but no, they'd rather step back and shoot 3 balls. That's a transition bucket. 3-pointers can be transition buckets. I don't see why not. At any rate, Augustine, I'm not even going to repeat that. I'm just not. But we appreciate your viewership. I'm going to hang things up. It's getting close to the witching hour, and I want to go home, and hopefully you enjoyed it. But we'll talk about this plenty more. Don't forget, I'm going to try to do another DK Pod. Hashtag DK Pod, right? Whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, we'll put up the podcasts and be watching. Wednesday, National Letter of Intent Signing Day, and we will try to do this again and talk plenty more about Jim Center's first class, as he has now gotten his coaching staff. Everybody's set. They've been active in social media. He's got the good quarterback supposedly coming in from JUCO. We'll see how things go for Jim Center. And for Dana Dimmel, the head football coach, and the UTEP Miners. Until then, though, thanks for watching. We'll be back with plenty more as we wrap things up here today from the 600 ESPN El Paso KLAQ KISS FM production room. I'm Duke Keith. So long, everybody. That'll do.